Deep in the city, Eleanor spills her tragic life story on paper. See, she's actually a 200-year-old vampire, and she can't tell anyone. She always tosses the notes, but one day, a crumpled ball sails out the window. A geezer snatches it up, reads all about Eleanor's secret, and doesn't freak out. Instead, he hunts her down and begs for a favor. Turns out, after showing her some dusty old photos, the dude is done with life and ready to go. So, Eleanor drinks him dry, putting him out of his misery. Meanwhile, Eleanor's mom, Clara, also a vampire, struts her stuff as a saucy dancer in a bar. Some creep gets grabby, and Clara clocks him, making her boss see red. She won't budge without her pay and swipes at the cash register. But then some guy named Warner shows up, hunting for her. Clara knows him, gets spooked, cracks a bottle on his head, and hightails it out of there. Warner gives chase, forcing Clara into a mall where she wreaks havoc to slow him down, then bolts out the back. They end up on a roof with no escape, so Clara takes a flying leap through a skylight, landing in a bouncy castle and scaring the kids away. This gives Warner a chance to finally corner her and start grilling her about Eleanor. Clara drags him back to her place. Warner gripes about Eleanor being a monster, while Clara cleans his wound, then strangles him with a sneaky garrote wire. Eleanor gets home, sees the body, flips out, and gets mad at her mom for making them run again. Clara says it's all to protect Eleanor, so they do the usual, clean up, pack up, towards the place, and vamoose. They hitch a ride on a truck, and Clara soothes Eleanor with a song. The truck dumps them in the boonies. After days of trekking and rough sleeping, they hit a new seaside town. Eleanor swears they've been here before. Clara brushes it off and tells Eleanor to hit the amusement park and have fun while she earns some cash. Eleanor ditches the park and slips into a restaurant instead, where she was everyone with her piano skills. Frank the waiter compliments her, tries to make nice, but Eleanor is as chatty as a clam and bails. Later, Frank spots her outside and tries his luck again. This time, Eleanor manages a few words, but still shoots down his offer of his phone number and walks away. Back at the amusement park, Clara ditches her clothes in a game booth and emerges in something a lot bolder. Right off the bat, Clara's turning heads at the park. She lures Noel inside a game booth for some paid playtime. The plot twist: Noel gets stage fright and can't deliver. Turns out, he just lost his mom. Clara switches gears, offering a shoulder to cry on. She learns about Noel's dearly departed mom's guest house and talks him into taking her there. On the way out, she bumps into Eleanor and gushes that she's finally found their sugar daddy. Noel welcomes them into the abandoned hotel. Eleanor gets her own room, and he feels sorry for this hardworking single mom that's Clara's cover story. Eleanor drifts off to sleep and has a weird dream about the day Clara took her to a creepy island cave. Inside the cave, Eleanor met another version of herself who bit her, vampire initiation. Eleanor wakes up to the sound of Clara and Noel getting their groove on next door. Meanwhile, a couple of nosy cops are sniffing around the burnt apartment, and the body's on the news. Eleanor gets the jitters, but Clara assures her everything's cool and they can chill here for a bit. Later, while watching the waves, Eleanor flashes back to a rough patch she went through, pre-vampire life. Captain Ruthven, a sleazeball who Clara thought was her ticket out of the orphanage, confesses her mom's actually alive. Then Ruthven pulls a total creep move and takes advantage of her. Back in the present, Noel checks on Eleanor, and she almost blurts out the truth, but Clara swoops in and shuts it down, reminding her they gotta keep the act up to survive. Later, Eleanor overhears Clara sweet-talking Noel about turning the guest house into a full-on brothel to rake in more cash. Sick of their shenanigans, Eleanor goes for a walk and stumbles upon a young girl tripping out hard on the beach. Since this girl's clearly a goner, Eleanor decides to spill her guts. She starts with a little backstory, way back when Clara meets Captain Ruthven and a Navy hotshot named Darvel. Darvel tries to warn Clara that Ruthven is bad news, but she's smitten and runs off with the captain. Suddenly, Darvel was right. Ruthven drags Clara to a brothel, uses her, and leaves her to fend for herself as a new worker. Clara eventually ends up pregnant with Eleanor. Since kids aren't brothel friendly, she dumps her in an orphanage. Next morning, Eleanor scribbles down the tale again and tosses the pages into the sea. Just then, she spots those same girls from before and follows them, realizing they all came from the same orphanage she did. This seaside town is her mom's hometown. What a mind trip. Eleanor is so distracted, she plows into Frank, who takes a tumble and hurts his hand. Eleanor feels super bad, offers Frank her hanky, and helps him get home. But then she sees all that blood and gets a bit too thirsty. Frank's parents flip out and rush him to the hospital. Eleanor, meanwhile, is stuck at the door. Frank's bloody handkerchief is calling her name, and she just can't resist. Once the coast is clear, Eleanor downs the blood-soaked hanky like a tasty shot. Back to those pesky cops. They find the old dude's body. Oh, mystery. Next day, Clara spots the same girl Eleanor saw before, bawling her eyes out after some jerk picked another girl over her. Clara swoops in, distracts the jerk with a smooch, and then drags him to the beach for a little snack break. Bye-bye, jerk. Once she's done, Clara finds the girl and basically offers her a glow-up deal. It's a little sketchy, but hey. Meanwhile, Eleanor pops in to see Frank at the hospital, and he's looking pretty pale. All that blood pumping through those tubes is tempting. But luckily, Frank's mom arrives and Eleanor's craving gets interrupted. The mom explains Frank has leukemia and is on blood thinners, hence the crazy bleeding. She thanks Eleanor, but Eleanor insists she doesn't tell Frank she came and then makes a quick getaway. On her way out, Eleanor spots a woman in a hospital bed struggling in her last moments. The lady calls her an angel and, well, Eleanor gives her a little mercy snack to end her suffering. Eleanor gets home to find Clara's already turned the place into a mini brothel, complete with working girls. Eleanor protests, but Clara's all, a girl's gotta eat. Later, Eleanor decides to crash Frank's classes. It's a little stalker why, but whatever. Their teacher, Kevin, has them do a creative writing thing about their life experiences. Eleanor remembers that night in the orphanage when Clara came back for her, and describes it to the teacher all emotional like. Frank shares a story about a childhood imaginary friend and how he thinks it was actually a ghost. After class, Kevin assigns them an essay called I Am. It has to be all true. Eleanor and Frank hang out, and Frank admits he knows she visited him, hinting that his mom thinks Eleanor is his girlfriend. He asks her out for real and leans in for a kiss, but Eleanor can't handle the lying and bolts. Afterwards, Eleanor chills by the beach and starts writing her story again. Flashback time. Turns out, when Eleanor was 6, Clara had tuberculosis and hid it to keep working and supporting her daughter. One night, Ruthven hires Eleanor out to all his buddies in the room. It's awful. Next morning, in waltzes Darvel, saying he's made a big life change. Ruthven shocked the guys even alive. Darvel drops cryptic hints about big news and says he'll bring it later that night. Once Darvel's gone, Ruthven takes his frustrations out on Clara, being the absolute jerk he is. After writing down her story, Eleanor does something new. She brings it to Frank, hoping he'll finally get the whole vampire thing. Flashback continues. Ruthven's done abusing Clara and spills the beans about how Darvel got super sick and then library obsessed. Suddenly, the Savella character shows up, giving Darvel a box with a treasure map to some healing shrine. Darvel's dying wish is to go there, so Ruthven takes him on his boat. This place is creepy central, with rumors of ghosts and whatnot, but Darvel goes into the cave anyway. Outside, Ruthven sees animals freaking out, waterfalls turning red ... He checks the cave and finds Darvel dead. Totally scared, Ruthven flees and pockets everything of Darvel's as his own. Frank finishes Eleanor's story and heads to the hotel. But it's Clara who answers, sending him away to protect her daughter. Meanwhile, Noel tells Eleanor he's not thrilled with Clara's new business idea. Eleanor tries to spill the beans, but Clara interrupts, mentioning Frank's visit. Eleanor swears to her mom that Frank's just a classmate, then runs to find him. Frank likes Eleanor's writing, but points out the assignment was about the truth. Eleanor says he needs to understand her better, but Frank assumes it's about disguised trauma. Ouch, hurt, Eleanor leaves, with Clara watching the whole thing from the roof. Afterwards, Eleanor heads to the restaurant, finds a blind piano player, helps her home, and well, has a snack. Next morning, those mystery cops find Clara's beach body. Turns out they're Darvel and Savella, both vampires. Eleanor goes to school. Frank avoids her, but he hands her story to Kevin for the assignment. Kevin reads it, then shows it to Morag the counselor. He loves the writing, but is also like, oh, this might be a coded cry for help. Morag's impressed it's all handwritten and starts reading. Cue another flashback. Ruthven and Clara run into Darvel again. Ruthven gives back the keys, and Darvel spills his whole freaky story. Inside the cave, he met a copy of himself that killed him. Darvel wakes up ... a vampire. And in walks Savella, leader of the Vampire Brotherhood, offering him a snack to get started. Darvel decides payback is in order and offers Ruthven the same gift, a box with a treasure map. Back at the hotel, Kevin walks in on a scene right out of a bad reality show. Noel half-dressed, ladies of the night everywhere ... It makes him worry even more about Eleanor. Kevin leaves Clara a very concerned letter, Either they have a chat or he's calling the cops and child services. Meanwhile, Morag calls Eleanor to her office for a deep dive into that story, which triggers another flashback. Clara, seizing her moment, shoots Ruthven in the leg, steals the map, and makes a daring horseback escape. That's where the story ends because it's all Clara ever told Eleanor. Morag gets suspicious and wonders why Eleanor hasn't just offed her already. Eleanor explains she only goes for people ready to go, usually the very old. It's a little morbid, but hey. Afterwards, Eleanor heads to the music room to play piano, and Frank seeks her out with a million questions about how being a vampire actually works. Eleanor clarifies her whole assisted death thing, and after Frank calls her a wimp, he invites her to his birthday party. She accepts. Later, Eleanor snags the box with a map and heads over to Frank's. Turns out she's the only guest. Frank takes her to his room, offers up his blood. But Eleanor just can't do that to him. Meanwhile, Clara chats with Kevin. As she reads Eleanor's story, she flashes back to becoming a vampire, excitedly drinking the red waterfall water. Then she jumps in the ocean, washes ashore, and feeds on the first dude she finds. Just then, Darvel finds her and drags her to Savella and warn her more vampires. They're not thrilled because their brotherhood is a total boys club, and Clara's background is a little sketchy. After some arguing, Savella lets her live, but bans her from the club. Darvel doesn't stand up for her, so Clara is banished and goes to find her only family, Eleanor. But when she peeks in the window, she sees Ruthven hauling Eleanor off in revenge for the stolen map. By the time she tracks them down, Ruthven's already hurt Eleanor, so Eleanor turns the tables and kills him. Knowing Ruthven probably infected Eleanor, Clara takes her to the island to become like her. Back in the present, Clara explains how making Eleanor a vampire broke the rules. Women aren't allowed to create. That's why the Brotherhood's been on their tail. Then, because Clara's got a Clara, she snacks on Kevin. Over at Frank's, things are getting cozy on the bed, and they finally kiss. The excitement is too much, and Eleanor accidentally hurts Frank. Panicked, she runs off. Frank chases after Eleanor, saying his leukemia is a death sentence anyway, so he wants in on the vampire deal. Eleanor takes a little sip from the wound, then tells him to hang tight. Meanwhile, Morag finds Kevin's body at the school. Yikes. Moments later, Eleanor's back at the hotel to grab her things. Noel spills the beans that Claire is furious about his cleanup job making all the workers disappear. Eleanor says she's leaving, and then Clara bursts in, yelling about the story putting them in danger. Eleanor snaps back that Clara didn't protect her, just kept her away from everyone, then shoves her and says she hates her before running off. Clara chases after her, traps her in the elevator ... and when Noel tries to intervene, accidentally sends him plummeting down the shaft. Whoops. Clara leaves to take care of Frank. Meanwhile, Darvel and Savella are chatting up Morag, who spills all about Kevin's death and Eleanor's story. At Frank's, Clara is waiting on the balcony. She grabs him in a flash. Meanwhile, Eleanor hears Noel's buzzing phone, fishes it out of his body, and calls Frank. Clara snatches the phone, telling Eleanor it's too late. Just then, Savella, Darvel, and Morag show up. Drama. Savella takes the phone and tells Clara they're taking the girl. Darvel breaks into the elevator, cuffs Eleanor, and drags her off to the car. Desperate, Clara chases until she jumps on the car, smashing the windshield, warning Eleanor they'll kill her. Cue crazy driving from Savella until Clara falls off. He tries to run her over, but she scurries to safety. Morag's freaking out, so Savella finally gets rid of her. After leaving the car, Savella hunts for Clara, who pounces on him. Just then, Darvel arrives, cuffs Clara, and hands her a blade for an execution. Clara pleads with Darvel, admitting she should have picked him over Ruthven way back when. Savella grabs her head ... but, surprise. Darvel cuts off Savella's head instead. Mother and daughter hug it out, and Darvel admits he's been protecting Clara from the Brotherhood all this time. They burn Savella, and Clara has a heart-to-heart with Eleanor, giving her cash and finally letting her go live her life. Clara and Darvel ride off into the sunset, while Eleanor and Frank take a boat to freedom. They finally reach the island. Eleanor sends Frank into the cave to turn into a vampire, and the waterfall turns red.